Hello, hello. We are back finishing up the House and Fata Morgana short stories tonight. Um, I it took me, so I will have to give a confession at the beginning of this stream. I have been trying to figure out who the hell the girl on the left-hand side is, the white-haired girl, which now I'm understanding it's the white-haired girl because I was seeing that as pink hair, and that is absolutely not it. Um, I got it. I figured it out. It's only taken me, what, a year now? How long have we been playing this game? Forever. Um, anyways, we'll be back on the short stories tonight. If you are new here, hi. I'm Kels, and you'll hear me read a lot. I do not claim to be a professional voice actor, and that is probably good. Let's recap and just get into it. All right, so our first side story was about Arthur Baldwin not being able to find out what went wrong with Nellie. The second was about a prostitute getting attached to Yukimasa because they both sensed something wrong with each other. 3 was about Georges telling his life story to Hot Maid through the painting. Amy was apparently poisoning him after the other Bollingers died, and he took it as punishment for his inaction, but he made sure to take her down with him. And good. Look, someone had to take her down. The only thing I'm hoping that one of these short stories is her slow, painful death. Because I'm a vengeful bitch. 1 Lost was about Jacopo bonding with Giselle after door 3 and experiencing past memories in the tower. 2 Pain was about the bad end where Giselle let go of Michael. Being mind-broken made Giselle annoyingly repetitive to spend eternity with, so Morgana decided to reincarnate her prisoners again. She taunted them, but Jacopo accepting every bit of punishment to atone confused her. Giselle taunted Morgana about mistaking Jacopo for Barnier. Yeah, basically, it seemed like Giselle kind of became the new master of the house, whatever, the witch, which I'm 100% into. I'm glad she didn't end up like that, but I forgot we get this opening every single time. I don't know why it makes me read that every time. All right, let's get into this. Okay, so we finished 2 Pain, so we're on to Boy Meets Girl. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Look, if there was a reality where we, as Michael, could also, like, become the witch's, like, devoted husband slash, I don't know, servant, whatever, I'll become a house husband for her. We could do this. All right, let's do Boy Meets Girl. This sounds like it's going to be really meet cute, so this game has done a really good job of tearing my heart out, though, so I can't imagine they're going to give me something as cute as that. Alright, Boy Meets Girl. Michael was bored out of his mind. His family had always been very overprotective, but at the age of 10, he was still afforded a lot of freedom. If this is not how Giselle and Michael meet, I will, kill someone. I will not actually kill someone, if you are the FBI agent watching my streams. He wasn't quite old enough to have to start acting like an adult yet, and in light of what fate had in store for him much later, this would turn out to be one of the happier periods of his life. Even as a child, Michael understood his place within the Bollinger family. Okay, this must be past Michael. I was thinking reincarnation Michael, and I got really excited for a second. I want them to be happy. He was obedient and did his best not to step on anyone else's toes. Wait a second. In the past, he was Michelle. I don't know when this is taking place. I'm so confused. Let's keep going. But bottling up his desires for so long put them at risk of blowing up, especially on days like this when there was an opening. His mother, who said, "Listen to your mother," as though it were part of her breathing, just so happened to be out of the house. So he wanted to do something different, to let out all of his pent-up boredom. He wanted to make this into a day he would remember. And since his mother had taken many of the servants with her, there was no one to get on his case if he acted out a bit. However, he had no idea what to do with this newfound free time. It was just drifting past him, every passing moment another moment wasted. I'll just have to ask Georges. He may have been a precocious child, but Michael was still a child nonetheless, and he genuinely believed his brother would have some idea of what to do. If his eldest brother, Didier, had been around, Michael could have gone to play chess with him or watched him train, but regrettably, only his eccentric middle brother was home. 10 days earlier, Georges had proclaimed he was going to paint a masterpiece. Michael hadn't seen him since. Maybe he was dead. That would kind of suck. Michael didn't want to have to deal with reporting a body. Though, in all seriousness, his brother was probably just in his special place and had lost track of time. Michael made his way to his brother's room, a process that would usually involve running into half a dozen servants, but today the Bollinger estate was quiet as a graveyard. He felt like humming as he walked through the corridors, but couldn't think of any songs. If only he wasn't so ignorant about the arts and recreation, maybe he wouldn't be such a horribly boring person. But today, Michael wasn't in the mood for those kinds of depressing thoughts. He stood before the door to his brother's room, knocked timidly, and then let himself in. "Hey, Georges, do you have..." he said, but he was unable to finish the sentence. His brother was splayed out on the floor like a corpse. He really had found a body. Michael stood in the doorway, frozen and useless like one of his brother's sculptures. Ouch, useless? Poor guy. The air in the room was stale from having been closed for so long. "Georges!" After several long minutes, Michael was finally able to use his voice again. He ran over to the body and dropped to his knees, shaking his brother's shoulders, on the verge of tears. This was his punishment for saying it would suck having to deal with a dead body. "Georges, please come back to me! What happened?" The corpse lurched forward, causing a breeze that stuck of paint. Michael shuffled backwards on his knees, his heart pounding so hard it felt like it would jump out of his chest. Georges gazed stupidly at his in-progress painting, heaving a heavy sigh. There we go, George having pink paint splattered around his body like a Danganronpa crime scene. Look, you have to sacrifice sometimes for art. Are you okay, Georges? Maybe you should get some rest. Didn't see you there, Michelle. Michael wanted to disappear. He felt like an idiot for getting so worked up over someone only to have them see straight past him. That's all you have to say? After worrying me like that? I was just sleeping. Nothing to worry about. Yeah, Morgana Kuma, a body has been discovered. Your bed is for sleeping, not the floor. Georges chortled. Did you need something? Oh, yeah, Michael said. Mother and most of the servants are out of the house for the day. There's some kind of trouble? No trouble. Georges tilted his head until it was almost horizontal. A few moments later, he clapped loudly and said, Aha! So you're bored. He was right, but Michael couldn't bring himself to just say, Yes, I'm bored, please give me attention. So he averted his eyes and said, I would not say I'm bored, but it's just so rare for the house to be so empty, and Georges chuckled. You're right, he said with an impish smirk. Michael braced himself, fearing his brother was going to tease him. We all need a change of pace every once in a while. Some real excitement to mix things up. I've been running short on inspiration these last few days, too. So he was not ready for what his brother said instead. Let's go out on the town, Georges proclaimed, at which Michael went positively bug-eyed. Now, this is a point that bears repeating. Michael's family was very overprotective of him, in part because he was so sensitive to the sun, but mostly because he was a daughter of noble blood. He wasn't a vampire, so the sun wouldn't kill him, but because of the circumstances of his birth, he was almost never allowed to go into the city. If he was lucky, he got to go down once a year, but always for some kind of business. The city was like a giant cave filled with gold and jewels, but guarded by a big, ferocious, poisonous dragon, and he could only ever see a little bit of it. So he was thrilled. So much so that he'd been raised with fewer hawks watching over him, he probably would have broken into dance, and maybe even a musical number. But he knew how to restrain himself, and restrain himself he did. When they arrived at the capital's central district, it was much busier than Michael expected. There were people everywhere, going every which way, doing anything and everything, and even more. Someone was shouting from a shop, trying to attract customers. Their voice was rough and deep and loud, nothing like the nothing like the quietly refined voices of everyone at home. A cat sat perched atop a barrel, covered in filth, glaring at Michael with eyes that seemed to glow. His mother would probably hate this. Her anxiety was too strong. She would say it was too loud and unrefined, refusing to even set foot here. But Michael thought there was a beauty specifically in the discord. Georges laughed merrily at the sight of Michael looking around in wonder. "Looks like we're in for even more excitement than we bargained for," Georges exclaimed. "Is it not safe here in the city?" "Oh, heck no it ain't. You let your guard down for 3 seconds and you're dead meat. Don't listen to anyone who says they have something good for you hear me? 9 times out of 10 they're gonna toss you in a big black cauldron and eat you right up. That's just how it is in the big city." "What?" Michael went pale as a ghost, and 3 seconds later, Georges burst out laughing. He'd been tricked. Michael flushed bright red. His cheeks were getting quite a workout today. "If there's anyone I shouldn't listen to, it's you, Georges." "I ain't lying. Just playing a little joke, that's all." "Only a little kid would fall for that." There we go. They come across Aladdin, dodging guards and singing One Jump Ahead. Exactly. One of these days, Michael was going to get Georges back. Beat him at his own game. "This," his brother said, giving him a quick wink, "this is the excitement I was talking about." He placed an outstretched finger on Michael's chest, right above his heart, and pushed gently. "There's going to be some real fireworks if anyone realizes who you are." He was right. Michael's mother would tear his head off if she found out her daughter was wandering around town in commoner's clothing. He wore a battered brown robe instead of an elaborate dress, and his hair was tied up and hidden inside a hat. At a glance, no one would clock him as a noble girl, but he still felt awkward and out of place, and people were more likely to notice that. Georges, meanwhile, had done this before, and he really owned the commoner look. If Michael didn't know better, he would think his brother was a traveling troubadour or something. "You really are a strange man, Georges." "You just now figuring that out, kid?" "No, just... that's part of my charm." "I hope one day I can be as confident as you." Georges was probably the only person in that house who considered trouble fun. If Michael had asked one of the servants to help sneak him into the city, they would have certainly taken off running, shouting about how they didn't want to lose their head. As a Bollinger himself, Georges would likely be allowed to keep his head, but even he wouldn't get off scot-free for this. Michael was glad he had Georges here with him. He didn't say that, though. Partly from embarrassment, and partly because he knew he'd be teased for it. "So, where should we go? Want to hit the pub, grab some cheap booze, and toss silver at the bard?" Maybe we should ease into things. That's a lot to start with." "It's not like I'm taking you to a monster's den. Just relax, it'll be fun." "A pub is still no place for children." "Come on, I may be a dunce, but I'm not dumb enough to take you to some seedy back alley joint. Most of the pubs along this main road are basically restaurants during the day. Some even have inns in them. There'll be lots of very nice people." "If you say so." Michael was less comforted and more terrified at the prospect of there being lots of people, but part of him was still interested. Not to mention, he wouldn't be going alone. So he gave a hesitant nod. "If you're scared, you can always hold my hand," Georges said. "Forward march, my young soldier. Follow my lead." Michael wasn't happy about his sprightly, airheaded brother playing him like a fiddle, but this was a battle his pride couldn't win. Holding onto his brother's pant leg, they set off down the bustling street together. But not for long. Michael stood flummoxed in the middle of the street. Oh no, did we already get separated? He looked left. No Georges. Right? No Georges. Had he gotten lost? No way. He had been right there just moments ago. There were just too many people around and he'd lost sight of his brother for a second. He wasn't lost yet. Michael was better than that. He would never get lost. But his pride couldn't change reality. They were on their way to the pub when Georges had run into a girl he knew and started talking. It didn't seem like they were going to finish anytime soon, so Michael had decided to wander around and explore the area. One thing led to another, and now he'd completely lost sight of his brother. Refusing to accept that he was lost, Michael started chasing after people the same height and build as George. Obviously, they all go to the same place. When one turned out to be wrong, he went after another, and before he knew it, he was well off the main road with no idea how to get back. Oh no, Michael! This area was much quieter than the main street. Not being familiar with cities, Michael couldn't tell if it was a good kind of quiet or a bad one, though. Maybe he'd just wandered off from the trade district to the residential one. Or maybe he'd ended up in some back alley where no one could hear him scream. If the latter, he needed to get out of there and fast. Back alleys were the home of ruffians and other unseemly types, after all. And who knew what they would do if they found out he was a noble? That, compounded with the fact that he was too shy to ask for help and too self-conscious to let himself be seen crying or even shaking, left him stuck there, just biting his lip. Ugh, why did none of my books say what to do when you get lost? And soon enough, he was directing his frustration at innocent bystanders. Oh, that's a good question. What if we run into Noemi without knowing it? That'd be cute. I like that. But then he caught sight of a stout woman around his mother's age watching him intently. 9 times out of 10, they're going to toss you in a big black cauldron and eat you right up. George's words played back in Michael's mind. Oh no. He knew it was a lie, and the woman appeared rather friendly and not at all like a child-devouring witch, but Michael was all alone right now, so everyone seemed dangerous. He was like a high-strung cat. Michael glared back at the woman so she knew he wouldn't go down without a fight, and as soon as they locked eyes, she spoke. He couldn't make any sense of what she said, though. My, look at you two little sweethearts. Shopping together? You're so grown up. Huh? 2 little sweethearts? Was she trying to disorient him by spouting nonsense so she could kidnap him while his guard was down and demand a ransom from his family? Hey, mister, came a voice as something tugged on his robe. He spun around to find a small girl looking up at him and sucking her thumb, evidently the source of the voice. Reincarnation of the lady who handed out the flower crown. Oh, that would be cute. Michael deserves a flower crown, so. Who are you? She asked. No, who are you? He stared at her, flummoxed for the second time that day. My daddy got lost, the girl said. I think you mean you got lost. Are you lost too, mister? No, it's my brother who's lost. We're the same. My situation is nowhere near as bad as yours, thank you. Michael listened to what the girl had to say, doing his best not to explode at her. She was apparently 3 years old and had gotten separated from her father while out shopping. His hands were full enough trying to figure out what to do with himself. The last thing he needed was to have to look after a lost toddler on top of that. He really should have asked the woman for help as soon as he'd noticed her, but by the time he'd collected himself enough to do anything, she'd already said goodbye and disappeared. Unable to find her again, Michael was stuck dealing with the calamity all on his own. A calamity? This is a 3-year-old, Michael. He couldn't just leave her there either, as much as he didn't want to deal with it. He was the older one here, and he had to set a good example for her. So Michael bent down to match the girl's eye level and said, Let's get you home. I'll help you find it. Can you remember anything near your home that might help us find it? Michael asked. The girl for several minutes before shouting, Oh, I do! Perfect, what is it? Maybe this whole lost kid ordeal would be over sooner than expected. He let out a sigh of relief. A brown cat! Which immediately turned into a sigh of disappointment. Cats move, Michael said. It has really mean eyes. Oh, forget about the cat already. Can you think of anything that doesn't move? Ugly Speckles the Third. I know. Monsieur Casimir is always sitting outside. No people either. Oh, I know it. He never ever moves from his favorite spot. I need something easier to find, like a building or something. Oh, there are lots of buildings, the girl exclaimed. The lady next door has a big flower garden. They're really pretty and red. Not like that. Oh, no one is going to know about your neighbor's flower garden. There has to be something big that anyone would... Michael realized he was getting genuinely angry and stopped himself there. The girl's eyes had gotten wide and watery, and it looked like the dam could burst at any second. He closed his eyes and shook his head, disappointed in himself. Here he was getting mad at a 3-year-old girl who was just doing her best to answer his questions. "Are you mad at me?" she asked. No, I'm not mad at you." Michael took a deep breath, letting it out slowly to release some of his frustration. He needed to adjust his expectations. She was just a little kid, and she wasn't always going to know the right thing to say. What am I supposed to do then? He'd been raised in almost complete isolation from the world, with only adults around to interact with. Even his brothers were a good deal older than him, so he'd never been in a situation where there were so many barriers to communication. And he was utterly clueless as to how to handle it. Would he actually even be able to help the girl get home? "Gems!" the girl said out of nowhere, interrupting Michael's train of thought. She reached her soft, pudgy little hand up and patted his cheek with it, right beneath his eye, at which he froze, dumbstruck. One second, she was on the verge of tears. The next, her eyes were glimmering inquisitively. What was she even talking about? Where did gems come from? This is just how little kids are, I guess. I wonder if I was like this at her age, too. Do your eyes hurt? She asked. Huh? Why would they? Because you've got gems in them. Oh, so that's what she meant. His red eyes. Michael understood now, but he wasn't very thrilled about the topic. He didn't like the color of his eyes, or his hair, or his skin. It was all because of them that he had to be holed up his whole life. That's just what color my eyes are. There are no gems in them, and it doesn't hurt. Wow, they're so pretty. Pretty. Michael blushed a little at the compliment, despite thinking just moments ago he would rather talk about literally anything else. He received compliments on his eyes often enough from his mother and the servants, but this was the first time one had ever felt genuine, with nothing behind it. When his mother said his eyes were pretty, she was envisioning him as an angel sent down to earth. When the servants did it, it was because of their status. They were never saying it about him and only him. But the girl, she was. There was no jealousy or pity or scorn or anything else to her words. She was simply excited about eyes she thought were pretty. I think normal eyes are much prettier myself, he said, without a hint of sarcasm in his voice. Okay, let's go somewhere there's more... Oh, never mind, that's wrong person. Okay, let's go somewhere where there's more people to start with, he continued. Michael stood up, hesitated for a few moments, and then extended his hand. The girl grabbed it excitedly, which made him feel like he was the only one anxious about the whole thing. I'll come with you, mister. You need someone to help you find your brother. You're the one who's lost, remember? Wait, mister? Right? Oh, Michael just now realized that she'd been calling him mister this entire time. He'd forgotten that George had dressed him up like a boy, saying it was safer that way. How was he supposed to feel in this situation? Upset that she'd guessed wrong? Embarrassed? Ashamed of himself for deceiving her? The emotion that welled up in his chest was none of those, though. Instead, Michael felt something that seemed entirely inexplicable at the time, a mixture of joy and pride at someone finally acknowledging him for who he was. Aww, he gets some gender euphoria. A faint smile spread across his face. Yes, I'm a boy, he said, letting each word linger on his lips. It felt so much better than any comment about his eyes. They wound their way down the streets, Michael occasionally working up the courage to ask someone for directions, and after repeating the process several times, they finally made it back onto the main road. Michael wasn't sure if it was the same road where he'd gotten separated from George, though. The capital was massive, and it seemed like every other street was called Main Street. As they stepped out into the throng, the clock struck noon. The pealing of the bell brought with it another wave of people. They looked to be artisans of all sorts heading out for their lunch breaks. Apparently, this main street collected a bunch of workshops on it. The artisans were all big men with even bigger arms. Their profession was making things by hand, and you had to be well built to do the job well. Michael found himself enchanted by the parade of muscles, following each new one with his eyes as they passed by. Do you want to be like them, mister? I don't know. I haven't really thought about my future much. Michael grimaced. It wasn't that he hadn't thought about it, but that he didn't want to. He knew all too well that he could never be an artisan or a knight or even a painter. I kind of want to be a craftsman, the girl said. They can make anything they want. Girls can't be craftsmen. Why not? Well, that was just how the world worked. Those were the rules, and you had to follow them. End of story. Michael was only 10 and he knew that. He knew what a girl's role was, and soon enough she would come to know that all as well. That growing up meant giving up on your dreams. I'm not sure, actually. At first, he just didn't want to shatter a 3-year-old girl's hopes. But the more he thought about it, the more dissatisfied he felt with the system, too. Why didn't he get to choose how to live his own life? Why did he have to be stuck on this dark and narrow road his whole life? What would you want to make as a craftsman? Michael asked to take his mind off his own dead-end future. The girl's eyes lit up. Leather sandals and bags, she proclaimed. That's quite practical. He had assumed she would say something more cute and frivolous, like toys and sweets, or even something completely outrageous, like the stars. So we can put them out. Put them out? Not put them on? Wait, was she... Does your family run a shop? Yeah. Okay, so she was the daughter of a merchant, which meant that they were probably close. The artisans' workshops and the merchant shops were likely to be set up near one another. Michael looked down to ask her if she recognized anything in the area, but before he could, she shouted, "Ah!" and let go of his hand, dashing into the bustling street. Hey, wait! Exactly, Main Street, Mainer Street, and Mainest Street. If he lost sight of her now, he would probably never find the girl again. So he ran off after her, slamming into a large muscular man only a few seconds later. Watch it! The man shouted, his voice so powerful Michael thought it might send him flying. His gut tightened. No one had ever yelled at him like that before, but he wasn't going to stop just because he got a little scared. He'd only met the girl earlier that day, and he didn't even know her name, but he was determined to get her back to her parents. Giving up now wasn't an option for him. The girl weaved through the crowds effortlessly, like a sprite out of a story. Meanwhile, Michael was crashing into people every 3 steps and was beginning to feel he was actually making negative progress. At long last, he made it through the river of people and caught sight of her again. But what he saw made his jaw drop. She charged at an older man, latching onto his leg. The man looked down at her, his eyes narrowed as if he were frowning, or about to start crying. He was very clearly the girl's father. In addition to his relief at their reunion, he also found himself surprised at the father's reaction. His only image of a father was a strict and impassive man, not someone who would show so much concern and compassion for his daughter. His father cared more about putting on an appearance of strength than showing love for his family. He would certainly never cry over one of his kids. That would make him look weak. And Michael had always thought that was just how fathers were. But there was nothing weak about the girl's father being so happy to have her back. Are you the one that found my little pumpkin? Her father walked over to where Michael was standing, grabbed both of his hands, and shook them up and down enthusiastically. Thank you ever so much. I just about had a heart attack when I saw she was gone. Oh, I'm so glad she's safe, he said, and then kept going and going until Michael felt his arms were going to come off. You're welcome. That's enough. When the man finally let him go, Michael's arms had gone numb. I'm ever so sorry, he said, scratching his head in embarrassment. I got too excited. The girl, hanging off her father's leg like a koala, said, Don't get lost anymore, Daddy. You're the one who got lost, Pumpkin, he said with a sigh. But he was too relieved to be angry at her, and his frown turned right upside down. Michael let out a satisfied sigh at the sight of them. He'd completed his mission successfully, despite the trouble he'd run into along the way, and everything was all back to normal now. So, did you bring her here all by yourself? The man asked. Everything was all back to normal in the sense that he was finally back at square one. He still had his original problem to deal with. I was here with my brother, he said timidly, but we got split up. I knew you were lost, mister, the girl said. Ugh. He wanted to say he knew exactly where he was, but he knew an adult would see right through him. So he stared down at his feet in shame, at which her father let out a hearty laugh and set a hand on his head. We'll help you find your brother then. He's probably having a heart attack right about now, too. He's not worried, Michael said under his breath, but secretly he hoped the girl's father was right. Michael told the girl's dad that they were going to a pub on the main street, and just a few minutes later they were standing across the street from it. It was amazing how much quicker it was when you had someone who knew the area to show you the way. And it made Michael feel that much worse about all the time he spent wandering through the back streets. Like George had said, the pub acted as a restaurant during the day, and it was packed to the brim with men on their lunch breaks. Eating had always been a quiet affair in Michael's life, so this was a brand new experience for him. It felt like he'd come to a festival. Before long, they caught sight of a man pacing back and forth in front of the building. It was his brother, George. And when he spotted Michael, he frantically ran over, shouting, "Michelle!" So frantically, in fact, he tripped over his own feet and face-planted halfway there. But the bigger a fool George made of himself, the happier it made Michael. "What'd I tell you?" the girl's father said, patting him on the shoulder. "George?" "Yeah?" After things had settled down and they'd parted ways with the girl and her father, George and Michael sat down for a late lunch. It was a very primitive meal, consisting of thin pieces of torn meat placed on slices of bread and eaten only with your hands. How dare you denigrate the sandwich like that? Michael was having a great deal of difficulty with it. "Were you worried about me?" he asked, trying to be as casual as possible. George took a swig of some watery wine to wash down what he had in his mouth, and then pounded his chest a few times. He swallowed, opened his mouth, and let out an impressively colossal belch. Michael had never seen his brother act so unrefined, but apparently that kind of behavior was allowed here. It seemed to even be the norm. "The heck you talking about, kid? Of course I was. I just about had a heart attack when I saw you were gone." "That was more excitement than you signed up for, huh? Mother would be very unhappy with you." "I mean, yeah, I don't want to go through another one of our lectures," George said with a strained laugh. He looked softer and more affectionate than his usual vivacious self. "But mostly I was scared something would happen to you, Michelle." Michael's hand froze in midair, holding a piece of meat on bread thing. "I thought you would just laugh it off if you lost me, honestly." "What do you think I am, some kind of cold-hearted monster?" "I'm just joking," Michael said, sneaking a peek at his brother's pouting face over his meat. He wanted to give a nice hearty laugh, but the most he could manage was a restrained smile. And for a child who didn't smile much at all, he'd done quite a bit of that today. "Hey, George?" "Yeah?" "I'm sorry for disappearing on you like that." George's jaw dropped. "Well, I'll be damned. I never thought I'd hear you apologize for anything, Michelle." "What do you think I am, some kind of emotionless hobgoblin?" "I'm just pulling your leg. I'm sorry for not keeping a better eye on you, too." "Maybe if you weren't so busy looking at every single girl we walked past, that wouldn't have been a problem." "Come on, don't twist the knife. That's where we're supposed to hug and say, yeah, we both messed up." George put his face in his hands and faked crying for a few seconds, and when he looked up again, he had a big smile on his face, which put a little bit of one on Michael's as well. His father would never panic like that, no matter what happened to Michael. He was too concerned about appearances. But his brother was different. George got scared for him, almost cried for him, panicked so much he made a complete fool of himself. And that was enough. Michael didn't have to be jealous of the girl and her father. His family loved him too. And he was happy he'd had the chance to see so for himself. "Hey, George?" "Yeah?" "Let's do this again sometime." "Heck yeah. Next time Mom and Dad and our scary big brother are out, let's go." It was extremely rare that they were all out of the house at the same time, so it was possible there would never be a next time. But Michael still dreamed of the day it would happen. Even if it was a few years from now, as long as this wasn't the last time, he would be happy. And when he came back, he would go see that girl again. He'd go find her family's shop, and if there was a pair of leather sandals and a bag for sale, he'd buy them. And then he'd ask the girl what her name was. Would she even remember him in a few years? Would he even remember her in a few years? Was that girl Giselle? I need to know. Because, her dad was a merchant, if I remember correctly. But I don't think we ever found out what they sold. He's 10 years old. I think he's still sort of realizing his gender. He's still anatomically female. So, that hasn't changed. I don't fully understand where this is in the timeline. Just, it's before the change because he gets to go out of the house. In all likelihood, neither of them would likely remember this day, but a little dream didn't hurt anyone. He could still feel her soft hands in his, and he could still see her big, inquisitive eyes, like two little balls of glimmering jade. Oh my god, am I right? Is it Giselle? Are we never going to find out? That's what I'm calling it. All right, and that was Boy Meets Girl. That was surprisingly cute after Pain. All right, Silent Night, Lonely Night. I just almost auto-completed that one. I love that picture of Michael. Like, he looks so damn good there. All right, Oh god, please don't make me read this more times. Silent Night, Lonely Night. Michael was even gloomier than usual. His ruby eyes gazed down at a letter from his mother. If it were a year prior, he would have been crying or shouting or throwing furniture. But nowadays, I rarely saw him explode at anything. And I preferred him this way. Getting loud and emotional over every little thing was what ordinary men did. But beneath Michael's gypsum skin flowed blood divine as mine. He was above them, and it did not befit him to behave as they did. Brooding in silence was much more appropriate behavior. I sat at the desk beside him, my chin resting on my hand. Michael could not see me there, though. Not that I wanted to watch him grimace in disgust at the horrifying scars on my face, of course. Michael, my dear. What? That was unexpected. He almost never responded to me anymore. Perhaps he wanted someone to speak with in his present tribulation. Michael briefly looked around the room for me, but no matter how hard he searched, his eyes would never find mine. You should hang it up, I said. Are you out of your mind? I'm just teasing you. I gave a little laugh, agitating him further. Today, his family had sent him Christmas decorations. First, a handmade, probably by his mother, white floral wreath, a lovely thing that a young girl might like. Then there was a doll in frilly clothing, also intended for a girl. I expected Michael to toss it all in the fireplace this evening, but merely destroying it wouldn't erase the fact that he'd received it. Nor that his mother would be expecting a response, not from Michael, but Michelle. Despite my repeatedly asking her not to, my mother continues to send me these Christmas boxes as it gets cold. I'm starting to hate even the thought of Jesus Christ. You should direct your anger at your family, not the Holy Savior. Yes, I realize it's misplaced, but... You could easily solve this with a curse. Just say the word. And you need to stop offering me that. As you wish. Michael had changed a great deal since his first arrival at the mansion, but that was one thing he stubbornly refused to budge on. Did he really care about his family that much? He seemed to have drawn a line in the sand and convinced himself that if he stepped over it, he would be surrendering his humanity. But what he needed to realize was that he never had any to lose in the first place, so his concern was entirely irrelevant. I would spare him that lecture today, though. He was busy racking himself over the letter and Christmas. Michael? What? Having grown tired of resting my chin on my hand, I was now sitting on top of the desk, looking down on him. Again, he looked around for me with no luck. Tell me about Christmas. Your family lived on a rather large estate, don't they? Larger than this little mansion, at least. You don't have to if you don't want to. It's just talking about when I was happy only makes me feel even worse now. I can understand that, I suppose. Michael had ever been happy? My family was too poor to put up Christmas decorations or do anything special for Epiphany. What gifts we did receive from the villagers all went straight to my mother, and I saw none of it. Though earthly desires were wrong, I believed, so I was hardly bothered by that. I was one who gave to those in need, after all. Michael, my dear. What? He glanced slightly upward. So close, but still not quite able to find me. Just saying your name. He appeared mildly annoyed, but didn't say anything in protest. Perhaps he thought it wouldn't make a difference, or had simply gotten used to me calling his name for the sake of it. Regardless, he reluctantly dropped his gaze back to the letter on the desk. I decided to leave him alone. He didn't seem willing to share his Christmas experiences, and I had nothing else to talk about. Morgana? Yes? That caught me off guard. Michael almost never initiated. I tilted my head, even though I knew he couldn't see it. Do you, he said, want to celebrate Christmas? Is that it? Had he lost his mind? At what point had I ever said I wanted to celebrate the holiday? While I was busy being flabbergasted, Michael stood up and took the wreath in his hand. He then began searching the area for me. Where are you? Right here. That doesn't help me. Where's your head? Am I close? He asked, waving his hand around in the air. That's my shoulder, I said, still not certain about what he was trying to do. How about here? A little higher. Here? Yes, right there. Holding one hand there in the air, he took the other, the one holding the wreath, and brought it up to the same level, placing it right above my head. It's like a flower crown almost. An awkward silence hung in the air for a few seconds as I failed to grasp what had just happened. Wreaths in my family were worn as headdresses. When I made one, I would place it on my mother's head like this. They're gifts for the women of the house. Look, if he accidentally gropes the witch, because this is absolutely the witch during this time period, I think he'd just die. I don't know if that would be like self-inflicted or if she would do it, but I don't think he would live through that. I'm glad you're here, so I can pretend this was a gift for you instead. What are you? You asked about my family's Christmas. No, that wasn't what I meant. Why was he doing this? He went quiet for a moment, then smiled, which was all the answer I needed. It was a very self-defeating smile, not meant for me, laughing at himself for putting so much weight on only one of the wreath's potential meanings, in sorrow for the family who refused to accept him. I made a very similar smile. Flowers would never befit me, after all. Not with one arm violently severed and the other nothing but bone. I could never be the innocent little girl, laughing with flowers in her hair. I have no interest in your wreath. Throw it in the fire. That's probably for the best, yes. And what we learned in that moment was that Christmas would never be a happy occasion for us. That said, it was better than I had expected nonetheless. We shared a certain energy there, staring in silence. A solitary, capitulatory, desolate energy. Michael, my dear. What? I turned up to look at him, wreath still in his hands, and he looked down in turn, this time matching my gaze exactly. He wasn't really looking into my eyes, though. He just happened to know where they were because I had told him. But I was fine with that. Would you like me to write that letter to your mother in your stead? What do you mean? I mean, I dictate what you will say. All you have to do is write it down and sign it, Michelle. It won't be something that you wrote, so I imagine doing it that way will take much of the pressure off. He didn't seem certain what to make of the proposal. I'd never suggested anything like it before, and I likely never would again. You're going to ask me for something in return, aren't you? Of course not. What do you think I am? A witch. Well, he was right. But Michael was a saint like me, so I wasn't particularly fond of him calling me a witch. I was in a forgiving mood today, though, so I decided to let it pass. I know how to show gratitude, thank you very much, even for a wildly ill-considered floral wreath. I was just fickle, that was all. Sometimes I would have days like this. Most, I would continue trying to bring him over to my side, to curse his family. But occasionally, I would show some kindness. Merry Christmas, Michael. It was sweet. I mean, for that period in their lives, that was sweet. Mostly because that period of their lives was awful, but... Alright, Scarlet in the coffee house. Maria. Hi, girl. And I assume that's supposed to be Jacopo in the background. Now tell me, my boy, how are things going on your end? Asked Jacopo's good friend, chest puffed and hand stroking a triangular beard. There we go, mistletoe materializes above them. He wasn't sure how he was supposed to react. Annoyed? Confused? Disappointed? Or as if he'd just stumbled across a mystical creature. Can I take your silence as poorly? Are we really going to do this? Jacopo finally managed to get out. But not without a heavy sigh, which created ripples in the 2 cups of coffee on the table between them. What are you even doing here, Maria? Yes, he was sitting across from his oldest friend, and very much a woman. Scarlett in the coffee house. What does it look like? Having a cup of coffee, thank you very much. Maria tilted her head, still stroking the fake beard. She had lowered her voice a few registers, but Jacopo could still recognize it as hers without much difficulty. No, I mean, coffee houses are men's establishments. What are you doing here? They were sitting in a far corner, away from most of the other customers. At the time, coffee houses were social gathering places for men, where they talked news, gossip, business, or anything else of interest. And for an investor like Jacopo, it was a crucial part of how he did business. He had come here today to scout out opportunities, but those plans fell by the wayside when he caught sight of the small-framed man with slick-backed blonde hair. So he approached her and confirmed his suspicions, that it was Maria in men's clothing. Why else would I be dressed like this? Doi. Please don't tell me you've weaseled your way into this place before. Weaseling isn't a very nice way to put it. But no need to get your panties in a bunch. This is the first time. Heck, half the reason I did it was to startle you, because I thought you'd be here today. Jacopo had many questions. So many, in fact, he wasn't sure where to begin. Where had she gotten the clothes and the fake beard, for one? Wouldn't the other maids get upset at her if they found out she was here? And why had she gone to such lengths just to surprise? Hold on, you said half the reason. What's the other half? Because I wanted some coffee, doi. You have coffee at the mansion. I know we're not out of beans. That's not the point, stupid. Coffee at a coffee house is a completely different thing. It's about the experience. And speaking of, it kind of sucks. It's a real sausage party in here. There we go, Maria has her Mulan be a man training montage. That was more surprising to him than her being here. That she didn't like it here because there were only men. In his mind, and in society's eyes for that matter, that was simply what coffee houses were, and he'd never considered that as potentially detrimental. Assuming some other maid had said the same thing to him, Jacopo probably would have lectured her about the roles of men and women in modern society, and how it wasn't her place to judge men's spaces. But he considered Maria too much of a friend and an equal, and far enough detached from the convention at least, that he couldn't bring himself to do that to her. Good! He also had no idea how to effectively communicate that sentiment to her. Anyway, please don't go pulling stunts like this too often. I don't want to catch any blowback. It's fine. No one caught me. Well, I caught you, Jacopo thought. Not to mention the curious glances they'd been getting the entire time he was here. If he hadn't found her when he did, chances are she would have been thrown out by now. Exactly. She's not a woman. She's just Maria. Oh, hey, Maria said, her eyes going wide. She then gave him a wink. Not unusual for her, but it looked very out of place on the not quite there gentleman look she was sporting. Next time I want to go, you come with me. You're the big name investor Jacopino. No one's going to want to get on your bad side just because you brought a check. Excuse me? This is a place for doing business. Also, don't call me that. You can do all the business you want. I listen in on your talks, and when we get back, I give you my thoughts. You know I'm sharp. I'm sure I could be of help. There we go. There's just a no girls allowed sign tape to the door. They do a check for cooties when you come in. He wasn't sure if she was serious or just pulling his chain again, but since she wasn't laughing, he decided to assume the former. So you'd be a second pair of eyes then. You know, that's not a half bad idea, he said with a chuckle. Maria's eyes went wide. What? I've always counted on you. You know that. Right. You're making me blush. Having Maria as his right-hand man would be the best for him in the long term. She was the only person he was able to really trust in this world. Oh, ow, ugh. But it would take a lot of work to make that possible. He would need even more money, more power, and more status. Enough to resist the pressure he would undoubtedly get from all sides. Yeah, there we go. Across eras, Maria keeps trying to find ways to make herself look like Jacopo's mistress, but with extra steps. See, here's the thing. They could just play along with each other and, like, you know, she could be the wife or mistress or whatever and get all the power and not have to have any of the extras that she doesn't want to have. They just keep doing this weird thing where they are going back and forth like this. Jacopo was the heir of the Berzati family, and Maria was the sole survivor of the Campanella family. There were still countless obstacles to putting her on the same stage as him. But in a week's time, he'll be taking the first step, he thought, tilting his head back towards the ceiling. That was when Jacopo's bride-to-be was scheduled to reach the new world. Hey, Jacopo? What is it? We'll always be like this, won't we? Maria asked, looking stern in a way he almost never saw her. But before he could answer, yeah, of course we will. We'll never change, she said, as if she needed some assurance. They could have been so good. They could have run the new world. But, you know, Morgana cursed them, so. Alright, a ghost of an excuse. We're back with Giselle and Michael. Yay. I'm not biased at all. It's fine. I will say I love the illustrations in the back. I think they're so pretty. Alright, a ghost of an excuse. I saw a ghost, Giselle said as she entered my bedchamber. She was wearing night clothes, and the feeble light of the candle in her hand made her look more pouty than scared. I thought you didn't believe in ghosts or anything like that. What do you want me to say? I saw what I saw. And that was supposed to be convincing? Are you sure it wasn't something else? I'm positive. There was a white figure going all woo, woo, woo at me in the hall. Just Morgana, like, fucking with her. With each ooh, she took another step towards me until she was close enough to grab me by the collar and throw me to the ground. Why did she seem angry at me and not the white figure hooting at her in the corridor? So, what do you want from me then? Don't make me spell everything out. What did she expect from me? She knew I wasn't very adept at reading people. How was I supposed to know what she wanted? Wait, slow down. It wasn't good to give up without giving it any thought. I needed to at least attempt to reason out what she may have been thinking. 1. She wanted me to exorcise the ghost. Clearly this is it. 2. She thought I was the ghost. 3. She wanted more light in the mansion. 1's not reasonable. How am I supposed to exorcise something that doesn't exist? 2's out of the question. There's only so much I can do about 3 with my supply of candles. Oh my god, Michael. What are you going on about? Crap, I'd been thinking out loud. She stared up at me for a few seconds before letting out a dramatic sigh. The sigh was 98% exasperation and 2% what seemed like almost lust, but I wasn't certain. I wanted you to offer to let me sleep with you tonight. It took a good 15 seconds to process what she had said, after which all I could manage to get out was a flaccid, huh? Giselle's face was bright red, and I was sure mine was no better. She felt warmer than usual through her night clothes. I wasn't sure if it was because the fabric was thin or if she was just warm. Or maybe it was both. Giselle giggled, nuzzling my neck. It was an impressively quick turnaround for someone who had been pouting at me only minutes before. In a way, it felt somewhat like having a dog or a cat. Michael! I forgot how badly he fumbles in the past. At first, we were both nervous, but that quickly melted away, leaving only comfort and warmth. Body heat belonging to neither of us, and both sweetness. I never could have imagined the day would come where I welcomed someone else's touch as much as I did hers. Dog, cat, obese rat, it's fine. We'll get you used to this. We'll get you used to this eventually. Do you really think I'll be able to? Of course! Before you know it, this will be nothing. In some ways, that's kind of sad. Sure, it can be. But the happy will be stronger than the sad. Something becoming every day isn't a bad thing, I don't think. I suppose. She was probably right. Her becoming a natural part of my life was a good thing. But then the closer she got, the harder it would be to be apart again. In time, would we get close enough that touch was just a completely normal thing for me? Would I be comfortable touching her arms or her lips? Would I be able to open myself up to her entirely? And would she accept me for who I was? I hoped so. To all of it. You're so tall, Michael. It's wonderful. Why do you say that? Well, I'm the tallest one in my family. My big sister is so small, and she's the most precious thing in the world. I've always been jealous of her for that. Like, she's more of a girl than me. I bet her wedding was absolutely lovely, too. Okay, I'm going to go on a rant for a second. As someone who is so much smaller than most people, tall women are absolutely gorgeous. Like, I am so jealous every single time. So, like, height, if you are listening to this as a tall woman or girl or whatever, and you think that your height makes you less feminine, say fuck you to that thought. You're gorgeous. That's a surprise. You're perfect just the way you are, though. Oh, really? That's not what you said when I first arrived. Exactly. Girls are pretty in general and in all sizes. So, I've I've grown, thank you. Her breath tickled my neck as she laughed. So I love the way that I can fit entirely in your arms. Sorry I couldn't be buff for you, too. Hey, you're never going to let me live that down, are you? Just a little payback. Boo, she said, looking up at me and pouting. Her jade eyes seemed to glimmer even in the dark. They were beautiful. But I would keep that thought to myself. No, Michael, use the Riz. Say it. I didn't want to ruin the moment with what would sound like cheap flirting. This glimmer was worth so much more than that. As was she. Giselle? Giselle, I'm so glad to have you in my life. Good night. I love them. We've had surprisingly cute ones today, which means that one of these is going to come along and just devastate us. Okay, we are on page 2. Oh, there it goes. All right, Eternal. I even looked this up, but I looked it up last time, which was a week ago, and I don't remember how to say this. Mazia is what I'm going to go with. Eternal Mazia. Oh, are we with Pauline? Eternal. Can we not put that word immediately after I've already decided I can't pronounce it? Are you okay, Orlando? A single flower, out of place in that den of body odor and booze, charged across the pub to the table in the back where he sat. She had radiant golden hair, as though she carried the sun itself on her shoulders. All the other men paused their drinking and merrymaking to get a look. I know it's Dutch for girl, I just don't speak Dutch, so I don't know how to pronounce it. The flower was out of breath by the time she reached his table. Orlando was a tall, lanky man with thin eyebrows, hardly what one might have assumed a lady as refined as her would be interested in. And the bandages wrapped around his head, covering one eye, only served to enhance the discount villain image. A man somewhere in the pub let out a whistle. Princess and the Thief, a match made in hell. Orlando glared over at him for a few moments before the young lady shouted, "What happened to you?" directly in his face. Don't shout like that, Felipa. Jesus, you trying to make me go deaf? Then tell me what happened. Are you okay? Are you hurt? Will it get better? It's no big deal, really. You know what they say? Scars are trophies. Oh yeah, you see any good eye patches out there in the market today? Something black would be great. Real nice and fancy, dress it up a bit. Orlando chuckled and shrugged his shoulders. Do we know these people? Have I just forgotten them? But Felipa's frown only deepened. Do you want people to think you're a pirate and throw you into the sea? Felipa pounded on the table in response. In the span of about 30 seconds, she had gone through the entire spectrum of emotions: sad, angry, upset, worried, disappointed. Listen, Orlando, she said with a sigh. We've been together our whole lives. Don't you think you should come to see me first? I've been worried sick ever since I heard how things went in Castle, so when I saw the soldiers coming back, I just had to know you were okay. Why would you keep me waiting like that? If Felipa was going to be this blunt, Orlando couldn't continue messing around. She stole a chair from somewhere, threw it beside him, and dropped down into it in a single action entirely unbefitting of an upper-class lady. Yeah, the names aren't ringing a bell to me either. Like, Orlando kind of rings a bell, but I don't know if it's for other reasons, so. Then she leaned in and said, So? So, what? So, tell me all about the battle at Castle, in detail, to make up for all the time you made me spend worrying. It's no fairy tale, you know. It's bloody and violent, not to mention it was a losing battle. I still want to know, she said, leaning in even closer, her vivid hazel eyes unflinching. It's about you, of course I want to know. He dropped his shoulders and sighed, feigning defeat. Everyone at the pub knew it was just an act, but Orlando had feelings for this enchanting childhood friend of his. In reality, he'd wanted to jump out of his chair and start dancing when she'd barged in looking for him. His other mercenary companions had caught on quickly to the reason he'd joined, the reason he needed the money, and they watched warmly. Aw, everyone's cheering for them. I didn't think they were Javi's parents. I thought maybe they were going to be Pauline's parents. I have no idea. There was only one person there who didn't know yet, Felipa herself. But it was only a matter of time. They'd been close their entire lives after all. All right, I can't regale you with tales of valor and triumph, but if you insist, Orlando said to preface his account. And then he told her of their battle at Castle, of their fallen comrades, of the state of the war. Their homeland was at war with the Western kingdoms. Battles broke out across the land, and mercenaries were hired to compensate for the lack of soldiers. Orlando grew up in a port town, but instead of becoming a fisher, he decided to take up the sword. His childhood friend, Felipa, chastised him repeatedly, doing everything she could to stop him from going to war. But Orlando was firm in his resolve. His first battle was 4 years ago, and he was surprised he had survived as long as he did. But now that he'd lost an eye, Orlando figured it was probably time to pack it in. He'd saved up a decent amount of money anyway. Orlando knew Felipa's parents wouldn't approve, but he was sure he had enough to convince them of his love, because love was only second when it came to someone so far above your own status. Which was why he hadn't become a fisher. Orlando took up the mantle of a mercenary to save enough money to propose marriage to the daughter of a wealthy merchant family. That was what he lived for. Hey, Felipa? Finishing his account of the battle, Orlando straightened himself up in his seat. Felipa raised an eyebrow. Yes, what is it? The soldiers at the nearby table started grinning, thinking it was finally time. But he wasn't going to propose to her in a grungy pub. He was planning to invite her somewhere more fitting when... Greetings, brave warriors, came a booming voice at the door. I celebrate your fine efforts out on the battlefield. And to commemorate, my crew and I offer you these meager gifts. Orlando clicked his tongue as loud as he could manage. Why the hell did he have to show up now of all times? Standing in the door was, in Orlando's words, a yellow-skinned bastard whose face looked like a lizard crushed by a plot lid. What? The man was the captain of a trading vessel that had quickly expanded its business over the past few years. Orlando didn't like him not only because he was an outsider, but because he had sweet-talked and bought his way into the upper crust. The man's crew carried barrels of wine into the pub, and every single soldier's face lit up, except Orlando's. He just frowned, trying to make it clear he wouldn't be bought so easily. Oh, why, hello there, Felipa. Fancy meeting you here. Seeing the man get friendly with her just irritated him even more. And then when he walked over and put his hand on her shoulder, Orlando snapped, kicking his chair back and almost charging at the man. Get your filthy hands off her, you ape. Back off, Felipa's mine. We have important things to discuss right now. Get the fuck out of here, con man. But Orlando didn't manage to say anything. It really is quite the coincidence. Orlando's jaw dropped. Felipa's cheeks were flushed, her gaze turned towards her feet, her arms held straight down at her center with her fingers interlocking. Oh no! He had never seen her like that before. The rough, pushy, unrefined girl she was for him was because he was just her longtime friend Felipa. In the 4 years Orlando had spent saving up to propose, another man, wealthy by birth, had come in and beaten him to the punch. He learned that night that it was the haves who made the world go round, and the have-nots like him were only along for the ride. As much as you may insist otherwise, you really do care, Orlando, Felipa's daughter, Pauline, said with a bright smile. Okay, well, I was like half right. Well, that's depressing. Sorry, Orlando. The many years had passed. The many years since that night had relieved Orlando of both his youth and his optimism. I feel bad enough as it is. Please don't take advantage of me, he said, his voice softer and his tone lighter now. With his life's mission ended in failure, Orlando gave up being a mercenary and took up somewhat less exciting work. Sometimes a bodyguard, sometimes just carrying boxes, but never anything terribly life-threatening. I think I might take full advantage of this. Thanks. See you in a bit. Pauline's smile was vibrant, something she got from her mother. Her hair was black like her father's, though. He could see both of them in her, and it tore him apart sometimes, dragging him back to his younger days. After watching her scamper off into the village, Orlando turned his head up towards the sky. Stop thinking about it. Just focus on what you have to do. He needed to convince Pauline that there was nothing to find here, then bring her back home. That's why Orlando sounds familiar. That's right. Orlando was the bodyguard that went along with her to begin with. It has been so long since that second door, I had completely forgotten about him. Because he didn't really do anything. Felipa would be furious with him. She might even end all association with him for this. But he was not going to let her go off on this search with some stranger and get herself killed. So his only choice was to go himself and then bring her back. Orlando heaved a sigh and then headed into the village. He prayed nothing would happen to her. Well, I hate to tell you this, man, something happened to her. Poor guy, we didn't even remember him until the last second. Alright, we have a slice of sweet serenity of Days Long Past, of Days Long Lost, 1 and 2. So let's go into 1. Oh, look at them! Alright, a slice of sweet serenity of Days Long Lost, 1. The Midsummer Festival was behind us, leaving only the hellish heat and none of the distractions. I'd lived here in the slums long enough to not be surprised by the chaos that came with the season, but I never looked forward to it either, particularly the smells. Mostly human smells. The alleys were where the worst of it was, and there was no peace in our little peacekeepers group when it came to decide who had to patrol them. But even down here in the foulest dregs of the city, there were small pockets of light. Hidden spots where one could enjoy the breeze without worrying about catching a surprise whiff of rotting flesh. One such oasis was a small graveyard, home to those forgotten souls who passed with no family or loved ones. It looked like little more than scattered rocks in the grass if you didn't know any better, and for the past 2.5 years it had been tended to by a single young girl by the name of Morgana. Today, as I had almost every day since she'd come here, I headed for the graveyard. I'd been having trouble focusing recently, ever since coming face to face with my feelings for her. I made rookie mistakes in training, which invited all sorts of teasing from Gratian. Give me a break, kid. You're even worse off than the day we met. I wanted nothing more than to clock him square in the jaw, but I knew he was right. I wasn't myself. And of all things, it was love that was throwing me off. I could hardly believe it. Though in reality, it was less the love itself, and more the age difference that vexed me. Morgana was 11 years old, still a child. And I was 21, an adult. Clearly, I was out of my mind. Something was wrong with me. I tried to talk myself out of it again and again, but the more energy I expended on the issue, the stronger the feelings became. If we were closer in age, it wouldn't have been such an issue, so why? I had no answer, though, only these feelings. And at that point, I had no choice but to accept them. I was in love with her. with a child barely half my age, no matter how mature she acted, and there was nothing I could do to change that. I knew at least that I would have to wait until she was older to tell her how I felt. I could only imagine how terrifying it would be for her to have a man twice her size and age profess his love. It was out of the question. I needed to make sure she didn't feel like I was pressuring her into anything, because that wasn't what I wanted. Why does everything have to be so difficult? The closer I got to the graveyard, the more of a disaster I felt. Obviously, I was thrilled to be able to be with Morgana. That wasn't even a question. But my own priorities were quickly shifting from keeping the peace in the slums to caring for her. Thoughts of her had begun to consume my life, though I would never admit as much to her. It was the awareness that posed the biggest challenge. It changed how I looked at her, threw out everything I knew about how to act around her. And Morgana had clearly caught on to my recent uneasiness as well. The other day, after a particularly awkward conversation, she had given me this burning glare and said, "You seem on edge. What foolishness are you scheming now?" "What are you fretting over, Jacopo? Just act normal. It's not that hard. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. Clear your head." I passed by a few makeshift gravestones, searching for that distinctive, tattered black robe. It usually wasn't hard to find, with it mostly being grass and rocks here, but I had no such luck today. Is she not here yet? Deciding to wait for a bit, I headed over toward a tree for some shade, which is where I found Morgana, her head resting against the trunk. What was the name of the story? It was something of sweet serenity of days long lost. But I don't remember what that first word was, so I'm surprised I remembered that much of it. If you're going to sleep on the job, at least go back to the brothel and do it there, I mumbled under my breath, approaching the tree. Hey. No response. Morgana? But once I got close enough, it became clear I hadn't just stumbled on her slacking off. She wasn't so much leaning against the tree. Morgana! As she was collapsed in front of it. I scrambled over to her, dropped to my knees, and put a hand on her shoulder, causing her to topple forward, her head falling into my chest. She was burning up. Hey, stay with me! Oh, it's you. Her golden eyes glanced up towards me, empty and slightly bloodshot. She clenched her lips together as if trying to hold back a cough. I just have a bit of a fever, a little sleep, and I'll be fine. Like hell you will. We need to get you back to the brothel. No, I can't go back. Come again? No, I don't have time to deal with your stupid morals right now. I don't want to get anyone sick. They're doing their best. So she hadn't come out here for herself, but to protect the girls at the brothel. And you call me stupid? Christ. Not a single person there cared about themselves over Morgana's safety. Not the girls, and certainly not me. I don't know why you count in this moment, Jacopo. I get that you're like a manager in some ways, but yeah, don't care. But she continued to insist I not bring her back. I bit my tongue, fighting back an urge to snap at her. I wanted to say something nice or reassuring, but I was too irritated by her usual self-sacrificing nonsense that I couldn't. So I can take you somewhere else then, as long as it's not the brothel. I lifted her into my arms, without permission, but it was an emergency. She would understand. Although in her feverish state, she didn't seem to understand much of anything right now. With Morgana in my arms, I hurried home. I laid her down in my bed, soaked an old rag in cold water, and placed it across her forehead. It was all I had, but it was better than nothing. I'll be right back, I said, then ran out the door. Next, I went to the pub, where I had the barmaid get me some fruit and other light foods. And while I was there, I told a few of my peacekeeper companions about what was happening, asking them to cover for me that afternoon. They laughed and teased, but it was all I was concerned about right now was getting Morgana better. Next, I made my way to the brothel. Maria was still asleep, so I woke her up and explained what was going on. Thankfully, having known each other our whole lives, it only took a couple minutes to get everything through her half-asleep head. She let out an exaggerated sigh and said, God, that girl. She should know us better than that by now. On my way out, Maria gave me a few pieces of advice and a set of fresh sleepwear. With the clothes in hand, I rushed back home once more, the merciless summer sun pounding down on my sweaty back the entire time. When I made it back, Morgana's breathing was fast and shallow, her eyes clenched shut in pain. The rag on her forehead was already warm. I peeled it off, and she opened her eyes, apparently awake. Can you eat anything? She shook her head weakly. Then at least drink some water. If you don't have something, you're going to sweat it all out and wither away and die. Not that there's much in that tiny body of yours to lose in the first place. I felt a pointed stare, but that was it. No witty retorts. It didn't look like she even had the energy to drink on her own. So I scooped some water into a cup and brought it to her lips. It took her a while to drink even half the small cup. Now you need some rest, but only after you get out of that robe. It's drenched. Maria gave me some nightwear for you to use. You'll be much cooler in this. I held out the immaculate white gown for her to see. Clothes in the slums were always someone's hand-me-downs, usually several times over. Something this new was a rarity. I'm fine as I am, she said, turning her head away. Absolutely not, I snapped back. Just put this on, okay? Oh, I see. You're not comfortable changing with me in the room. All right, I'll be outside. Does that work? Oh, come on, say something. If you won't change yourself, I'll do it for you. You want me to rip that big heavy thing off of you myself? Do you? If you would, please. Yeah, I hear you. You'll do it What? Did did she just ask me to do it for her? I want out of this, but I can barely move myself. Oh, right, yeah. All right, fine. Well, since you asked so politely. My entire body suddenly froze up. I'd only said what I did because I was so certain she would tell me no. This was not part of the plan. The fever must have really gotten to her. Under any other circumstances, she would never agree to this. Morgana hated showing people her skin, which was one reason she wore that heavy black robe even in the summer and kept her face hidden by that ridiculous hood. Keep your head, Jacopo. You're caring for a sick girl, nothing more. She's a child anyway. You're not so far lost that you would have inappropriate thoughts about a child, are you? Yeah, come on, Jacopo, are you? Please don't make me read that. Repeating the words in my head like a mantra, I began removing the robe. It was even wetter than it looked, and it weighed a ton. Her hair was sticking to the back of her neck, too. I would probably need to comb that out when I was done. My heart pounding at probably dangerous speeds, I set the robe on the floor beside the bed, doing everything in my power to look anywhere other than at her. I then pulled the gown down over her head, guiding her arms through the sleeves. But as hard as I tried, I couldn't completely avoid the sight of her pale white skin, particularly her chest, but not for any uncouth reasons. It was the cross-shaped scar there that caught my eye. Scars covered Morgana's body from her time in Lord Barnier's captivity, and while the wounds themselves had healed, it was still a grisly sight. The deepest among them was a cross-shaped scar in the center of her chest, which seemed to embody the entire tragic story of her life. Seeing it filled me with unspeakable sadness and helplessness, not to mention deep shame at the base thoughts that had threatened to cross my mind in the moments before. I wished there was something, anything I could do to show her that not everyone was out to hurt her, as much as the world may have made it seem so. I'm yanked back to my face. Yanked back to my senses by the sound of her voice. I pulled the gown down the rest of the way in a panic. I was just making sure I got it on right. Absolutely nothing inappropriate, I swear. Jacopo, that I'm sure that's also what people who do inappropriate things say. I don't mind that, actually. The headcanon that this Jacopo is just mistaking his devotion to Morgana for romantic love because it's so intense and everyone else shipped them. Like, I wouldn't mind that interpretation. I definitely am not fond of the grown-ass man in love with an 11-year-old girl. But that was perhaps the least convincing excuse imaginable. She looked me straight in the eye, then turned away. And then, in a voice as soft as a feather, she whispered, I'm sorry. You're sorry? For what? I don't understand you at all. Maybe she felt bad about imposing on me? Either way, she sure got meek when she wasn't feeling well, huh? I chuckled to myself. The only thing you need concerning yourself with right now is getting better. Then when you are, you can tell me to go burn in hell for this, like the Morgana I know would. Don't apologize. Okay. See, this is what I'm talking about. I can't deal with you like this, I said with a sigh, picking the robe up off the floor and making my way towards the window. If I set it out in the sun, it'd probably be wearable again by tomorrow. That thing is drenched in sweat. Jacopo, please clean it. A little bit of soap. Please. Is there anything else you want from me? Believe it or not, I'm capable of showing kindness when someone's sick. So ask away. I'm at your service. Yeah, I figured as much. Me? Hmm? Leave me. Uh, right, you want time to rest in peace, Don't leave me. I stopped dead in my tracks and spun back to look at her. Had she really asked me to not leave her alone? Her? Morgana? I was pretty sure I hadn't misheard her at least. Sure, I said uncertainly, then headed back towards the bed, taking a seat on the edge. The wooden frame creaked under the weight of a second body. What? Your face is red. Did I get you sick? No, of course not. I'm perfectly fine. That's good. Morgana's eyes were unfocused, like she was drifting between dream and reality. I doubted she grasped what was going on or anything she had said. And by the time tomorrow came around, she probably would have forgotten everything, which was probably for the best. I didn't want her to remember me looking like this. I reached over and took Morgana's hand in mine. She didn't protest, and in fact, it seemed to help her relax, because less than a minute later, she had drifted quietly off to sleep. The sight of her soft, sleeping face in the sunlight was indescribably beautiful, no matter how hideous anyone else might have thought it. I remained there, her hand in mine, for a while longer. And as I said a little prayer, may I be the one to take these hands and guide them into the future. Well, you do, just not in a good way. Sorry, Jacopo. All right, A Slice of Sweet Serenity of Days Long Lost. That's what the name of this one is. All right, let's get into part two. All right. It felt like nightmare after nightmare. Dreams of my mother abandoning me, of nobles mocking me, of that terrible lord drinking my blood, of filthy men in the slums gagging at the sight of me. But no matter how many times they threatened to swallow me up, there was always a hand there holding me in place. It was a man's hand, large and strong, but soft and gentle. It could only belong to one person. I slowly drifted back to reality. My head still hurt a little, but it wasn't as hard to breathe anymore, and I could see clearly again. Pale blue moonlight seeped into the room through the window. I pushed myself up in the bed, a little too hard though. The weight I was used to being there was gone, causing me to misjudge the push and stumble. I looked down to find myself in a white robe I didn't recognize. It was light and breezy, and it felt nice on my skin. Lifting my arms up, the fabric made a pleasant rustling sound. My hair had also been let down, the braids undone and all of it brushed. I gripped my right hand shut, then loosened it again, repeating the action several times. It felt slightly warmer than the left, as if someone had been holding it while I slept. Looking around, I realized where I was. It's his home. I had been here about a month earlier, around the time of the Midsummer Festival, and the ceiling above me looked exactly the same as it did back then. Compared to the almost sickly sweet aroma of all the women in the brothel, it smelled almost earthy and rugged here. That alone was enough to tell it was a man's home. What I didn't know, though, was why I was here. I'd woken up this morning feeling unwell, so I went to the graveyard to rest by the tree, but I couldn't remember anything after that. Oh, you're up. How are you feeling? There was another presence in the moonlit room. As it drew closer, its silhouette grew clearer. In the past, I would have braced myself at the sight of a man, no matter who, approaching me in the dark, but I was able to stay relatively calm now. The moon shining through the solitaire window was the only source of light. Candles were a luxury most couldn't afford in the slums. And in the pale light, I could see his face twisted into a frown. Not an angry frown, though, one of concern. I'd learned to tell the two apart in the 2.5 years since we'd met, though I would never admit to it. Gazing absently at him, a number of questions leapt to mind. Had he brought me here? Had he watched over me the whole night? Had he been the one holding my hand? Would you care to explain what I'm doing here? But the question that actually made it out surprised even me with how callous it sounded. Hey, you need to learn to show some goddamn gratitude. You're here because you decided to drag your dumb, sick ass to the graveyard and pass out there out of some stupid, misguided attempt to protect the girls at the brothel. I brought you to my place so you didn't die out there in the heat. Let me give you a hint. 2 words rhymes with thank you. I never asked for your help. Christ, you couldn't be any more impossible if you tried. What happened to the girl from this afternoon? What? Nothing. Don't worry about it. I tilted my head in confusion, and he clenched his lips and averted his gaze. I hoped I hadn't said or done anything in the few hours I'd lost. A mix of worry and humiliation grappled inside me, pulling me back and forth between wanting to ask and not wanting to know anything. Anyway? But before I could make a decision for myself, he changed the subject. At least you've recovered enough to put that sharp tongue of yours back into action, he said with a smirk. I had no idea what to say. Clearly, he had looked after me when I was unable to look for myself. For that, he deserved thanks, but I couldn't actually put that into words. And even worse, I was afraid whatever I said next would only upset him more. You haven't eaten anything all day. You must be starving. I'm not. Before I could finish the sentence, though, my stomach let out a deep rumble. My eyes went wide, and I gave him a desperate look, then dropped my gaze to my hands. I couldn't believe that had happened. My stomach, growling in hunger like an ordinary girl. It was humiliating. I stared down at my clenched fist for what felt like an eternity, unable to bring myself to look up at him, when I heard a muffled snicker from above. I wanted to snap at him for laughing at me, but I couldn't even manage that. Come here. He grabbed a chair and placed it by the window. I knew it was only because that was the one source of light in the room, but still I was hesitant to step out of the darkness without a hood to cover my face. I could see so much more of the world than usual. Standing in the moonlight, he was illuminated from head to toe, and I could even make out the details on his face. He was smiling gently, not smirking or glaring or frowning as I had expected. His eyes, the color of fallen leaves, narrowed just slightly. What's gotten into you? There was always a hint of derision in his smile. There was always a trace of contempt in his words. He was short-tempered and quick to shout. He was obsessed with logic and always complaining about feelings. So why was he being so... none of that now? You're the worst. He hadn't done a thing wrong, and yet everything felt wrong. It wasn't plain fair for him to only be nice to me now. It was cowardly for him to only smile at me like that now. A kind of irritation I didn't know how to describe began pooling within me. Nothing was making sense anymore, and I didn't know who I could ask to explain it either. So it just built up and up and up, to the point that it was almost hard to breathe, to the point that I almost felt sick. As unflattering as it was to describe my own feelings that way, but it scared me, not knowing what any of it was. Would I ever have an answer? Would I ever have a name for this feeling? Would the day ever come that I could feel comfort in it? And would I even be me if it did? I certainly couldn't imagine myself there ever. With that kind of confidence, smiling like him, being sociable like Maria or Sharon. Are you just gonna sit there and stare off into space? Whatever. I always had my hood up and my head turned down, so I almost never had the chance to look at him so unobstructed. Which reminded me how much older than me he was. He was an adult, and I was just a kid. He didn't have to look after me either, but he did for whatever reason. And who knew how long that would even last? He could very well go off and do something else with his life, somewhere far away, before I figured anything out. So, I said. The thoughts just kept coming and coming, almost sending me into a panic. He frowned slightly, tilting his head. And every second I couldn't figure out what to say next, his frown deepened. But his patience never ran out. He stood there and waited. Which reminded me, once, not long after we first met, when I still considered him a potential threat, he'd done the same thing. Waited for me to speak, despite not being a patient man at all. In 4 years... What? In 4 years, how old will you be? What, can't you do the math yourself? Anyway, I'll be 26 4 years from now. 26. Hearing the number put into perspective exactly how far ahead of me he was. By then, he could have a loving wife and children. And why wouldn't he? That was what people did at that phase of their lives. But what will you be doing then? Hell if I know. What kind of question's that? I mean, I'd at least like to be done scraping by every day of my life by then. Another 4 years of this is more than I can take. Oh, what's gotten into you? He said with a sigh. I turned up to face him. Words danced on the tip of my tongue. If he could just wait for, no, 1 year. If he could just stay here in this confined life he hated so much, not trying to go out into the world like he loved to talk about. 1 year was all I needed. That would be enough time to make sense of myself, to convince myself I was a regular girl like anyone else, and to figure out what on earth I actually felt about him. I knew I would just be holding him back. Why should he care about accommodating the wishes of a hideous girl like me? But if he could just wait a year. Just 1 year. Morgana? All I had to do was say it, and it would take a huge weight off my shoulders. But I couldn't bring myself to put those thoughts into words. Not because I didn't want to, or because I was too embarrassed to, but because the act of asking for something still held so much weight for me. Are you still feeling under the weather? Is that it? Perhaps so. Damn. Then you'll want something light, I'm guessing. I got some fruit from the barmaid at the pub. He stepped over towards me, holding out his hand. It was large and bony, nothing like my own hand. And in it he held an apple, which I accepted with both hands. He'd managed to get me new clothes and food, which I knew wasn't easy given our circumstances. And as much as he yelled about me thanking him, he never once tried to guilt me about everything he'd done for me. Not him, nor the girls at the brothel. Don't get too generous, I said, carrying the apple to my mouth. I have no way of paying you back. My help isn't an investment I'm looking for returns on. You know that perfectly well. Are you starting to feel guilty? That's cute, he said with a chuckle. Instead of replying, I bit into the apple. Its sweet juices filled my mouth. If you want to pay me back, just remember to say something nice over my grave. I know you've got a soft spot for the dead. Sure. I giggled, holding the apple in front of my mouth so he couldn't see it. Apparently, he still remembered the time I told him, if you want me to be nice to you, go die. But the truth was, I'd wanted to do something for him, in life, in return, since even before then. And I hope you live a long life. That way I won't have to worry about showing you any kindness for many years. You're really against the idea of being nice to me, huh? He said, frowning. More than you could ever imagine. Christ, no mercy. But all right, fine, I'll live a long life. And so will you, and Maria, and Sharon, and that dumbass Gratian, and all our other friends. Right. I handed the half-eaten apple back to him, guessing he hadn't eaten for almost as long as me. And after a few moments of hesitation, he accepted it, taking a large bite out of the untouched side. I watched quietly, some part of me certain that we would have many more occasions like this. And the sweet taste of the apple still lingering in my mouth, I whispered, to a long life. For all of us. Well, to be fair, you all did have a very long life. It was just very cursed as well. All right, I think we can do one more, and then we'll end here for tonight, and we'll have to pick up next time. But, the Ghost of Rose Manor. Yeah, Jacopo, stop raising the death flags. The Ghost of Rose Manor. Hey there, ladies and gents and everything in between. I'm your run-of-the-mill landscape painting, but you can call me Mr. Canvas. Today, I'd like to talk about my time with the Rhodes family. Back in the time of Hayden Rhodes, I hung in the first-floor drawing room. The old man was rather fond of me, if I do say so myself. This was the only piece of art left in the house when I bought it, he liked to tell everyone. But once that big troublemaker of a painter showed up and his work started to fill the house, things got a little disagreeable for me there. He was a trend chaser, and that didn't really suit my style. So before long, I got moved off to an out-of-the-way corridor where I was subjected to some horrible mistreatment. I tremble in my frame thinking about what that smarmy little child in her garishly frilly dress did to me that day. Of whom do I speak, you ask? Why, my great and terrible arch nemesis, the young Nellie Rhodes, of course. Oh no. Her brow furrowed and her lips pursed, the small one glowered at me for a few moments before saying, I've always hated this painting. It's so dreadfully old-fashioned. Can you believe the gall of this girl? She then lifted me off the wall and said, no one's going to miss this hideous thing anyway. Now, I consider myself to have a pretty good handle on my wits, but you can bet I was sweating like a pig over her trying to throw me away. Which is when Nellie let out a little squeal and dropped me to the floor. Ew, it's all wet and gross. Oh, dearest Mel, I need your help. After a few moments howling to herself, Nellie scampered off, leaving me all alone with no way to get up. And just as I was sure this would be the end of me, someone lifted me up off the floor. It was the white-haired girl. The soft touch of her hands made my heart skip a beat. Nellie was even an asshole to paintings in this era. Yeah, she was just a spoiled brat. And I mean, who wouldn't in my position? She looked so much like... Then with a faint smile, she said, "Let's bring you somewhere safe," and carried me, wrapped tight in her arms, to the second floor. She seemed to know where all the best nooks and crannies in the house were tucked away. After hanging me up somewhere nice and out of the way, the white-haired girl said, "There, that should do it. I just couldn't bear to see such a lovely painting thrown away." What a sweetheart she was. Nellie could have stood to learn a thing or two from her. "You look like a garden, or perhaps a field somewhere. You're beautiful, and I'd love to see it in person someday." Oh, girl, I'd have loved nothing more than take you there myself. It was a lovely area for horseback riding, and the shade beneath the trees was perfect for a picnic. That's even where you... Whoops, no, wrong person. I seem to have mixed the white-haired girl up with someone else. I let out a chuckle no one could hear, and as I watched her walk away, I said a little prayer. May your life be filled with joy. He hadn't been allowed to have that much, so I hoped that at least she, his spitting image, could. Well, that was very quick. We might be able to get another one in. All right, the Not So Little Mermaid. It's so hot. I feel like I'm going to melt, Pauline said, flopping back on the ground beside me. She was having nothing but trouble on her search, and it seemed to be taking its toll. It looked as scorchingly hot as it felt. The sun hung high in the clear blue sky, shining its light down on us and the clear blue ocean before us. You're wearing 5 layers and your hair's long as hell. What do you expect? Cut half of it off if you're so hot. Is Javi back? A girl doesn't cut her hair on a whim, young man. Yeah, whatever you say, lady. She was more than a few years too old to be calling herself a girl, and I'd told her as much before, even if she still acted half her age. I'd never met another lady in her 20s that seemed so childish. I guess I'll just have to go for a swim. You what? Turn around for a second, Javi. Make sure no one comes this way, okay? Pauline said, undoing her top. What? Hey! I said, my voice cracking. It happened so suddenly, I barely had time to process. So I just did the only thing I could think of, what she told me to. You can look now. I can look my ass. I wanted to snap about 1,000 things at once, but my irritation fizzled out at the sight of her playing in the water. Her feminine curves, less pronounced, but still distinct through the water. Her white, mostly untanned skin. Her long black hair bouncing in the waves. Girl, if you are untanned, you need suntan lotion. You are going to burn. You are going to very much regret this. It was a lot for me to take in. Damn it. At best, I was like a little brother to her, and at only 14, I was most likely just a baby in her eyes. Stupid, sheltered woman. You don't understand what guys are really like. Huh? Did you say something, Javi? Nope, you're just hearing things, doofus. Hold on, didn't she say the man she was searching for was her lover? Then maybe she really did understand guys better than I thought. It kind of pissed me off to think about. Ugh, I hate you, Pauline, I muttered under my breath. I'd still never called Pauline by her name to her face. We're apparently in the era of very quick ones. All right, The Maid and the Beast. I think we may actually finish this tonight. The Maid and the Beast. As soon as I started learning how to talk, the human woman began bombarding me with questions. After we finished weeding a section of the garden and returned to the mansion, she would waste no time asking, "What would you like for supper?" Followed quickly by, "How did you enjoy last night's supper?" And, "If I were to redecorate, is there any particular theme you would like me to adhere to?" But she didn't stop at queries of only questionable significance. What is your favorite color? What's your favorite season? What's your favorite number? What's your favorite flower? I understood what she asked, but I didn't react to most of it. Because if I did, she would latch onto me like a fly to a carcass, and I did not want to deal with that. Besides, even if I could speak the human tongue fluently, it wouldn't suddenly make me talkative. That just wasn't me. Not to mention, it would be wrong for a beast and a human woman to be chatting together like friends. The human did not seem to comprehend my displays of disinterest, though. One day, she handed me a stick of charcoal and a slab of wood, saying, "If words are too difficult, we can try pictures instead." Where had she even gotten these things? Don't ask, it's Giselle. "First, try drawing me. This is only practice, so do not worry about making it perfect. Draw however you wish." I wanted to crush the charcoal, smash the wood against the ground, and get away, but she started talking again before I had the chance. "Sometime long, long ago, someone else painted a portrait of me as well. It was so, so very long ago that sometimes I am unsure whether it was real or merely a dream jumbled up in my memories. But I remember how it felt, how anxious they were drawing, and how delighted I was for them to be drawing me. And sitting here with you feels like it brings me ever so slightly closer to the woman I was then." The human woman often spoke of events that happened centuries ago, so this was hardly unusual for her. "So please, would you draw me? Your doing so would help to calm my spirits if you would rather not speak." All the insistence in the world would not make a beast any more capable of creating art. I wanted to throw the stool against the wall and storm out of the room, but the look in her eyes stopped me. Her gaze was more tenuous than usual, as though refusal would send her over the edge. I loathed it. So I took the charcoal in my unsteady hand. If a horrendous drawing from a horrendous beast would bring her back, then she would have her drawing. What I created, though, was nothing more than scratches of charcoal crudely imitating shapes. It hardly even resembled the child's doll, let alone her. Looking down on it with a soft laugh, the woman said, "It's beautiful." I knew very little about the human woman, and I doubted that would ever change. Giselle thinking about Michael's painting her, still my heart. All right, Sisterhood of Secrets. One afternoon, a modest girls' get together was held in the rose garden at the Rhodes estate. It was far from a friendly gathering, though, and its members hardly those one might expect to find sharing tea. Ugh, everything's a secret with you, isn't it? Isn't there anything you can tell me? Stuffing another freshly baked cookie into her mouth, the Rhodes' daughter Nellie glowered at the white haired girl, who looked as though she wanted to disappear. Beside her, with an inscrutable smile on her face, sat the black haired head Abigail, oft spoken of in whispers as the Witch of Rose Manor. "I'm truly sorry, Lady Nellie," said the white haired girl, her gaze affixed on her hands clenched above her knees. Under normal circumstances, the two Abigails and a young noble lady of the house which they served would never be seen dining at the same table. Only at Nellie's insistence had they been brought together. Now, my lady, please be reasonable. Every girl has her secrets," said the head Abigail, her smile unwavering. She didn't look a day older than 20, but supposedly she had served in the house since Nellie's grandfather's time. "There's secrets, and then there's not being able to say what family you came from." "Would your mother have brought her into this house if she posed any danger? Or do you not trust your mother's judgment, Nellie?" I do, but still." "Then you needn't concern yourself with her." The head Abigail's smile remained firm, as though carved into her face. Nellie pouted, seemingly stripped of the energy to pursue the subject any further. So instead, she raised a new topic of conversation. "Okay, fine. Let's talk about something that isn't a secret. Like, what is it in someone that makes your heart flutter?" Nellie leaned across the table, her face practically in the white haired girl's. But the only response she received was downturned eyes and bitten lips. "Fine, you don't have to," Nellie said, turning towards the head Abigail. "But in her place, you do." It had struck Nellie that in her entire life she had never heard so much as a whisper about this woman's private affairs. The head Abigail was rather pretty, though, which she imagined invited men's advances quite often. "What makes my heart flutter, you ask? Let us see.
I am rather fond of pearly white skin, unusual eye colors, and ethereal. But, pardon me, I really must be going. The mistress needs my assistance. Good day,
said the white-haired girl, scrambling on from her chair and back towards the mansion.
to which the head Abigail gave a softly sinister laugh. Does every woman in this house have some deep, dark secret? Thought Nellie, and it would not be long before she realized that she, too, could count herself among them.
All right, are we ready for the last one? I'm kind of sad. But a cup of kindness. Must be back with Jacopo. For you.
Maria was lounging in the kitchen with some of the other maids after a long day when, out of the blue, she was summoned into the hall by the master of the house. He shoved a paper bag branded with the name of an expensive restaurant into her hands, and the pieces fell into place. He'd gone out with the mistress today and had apparently decided to bring a gift back. She poked at the bag, rustled it, shook it a bit, trying to guess what was inside, to no avail.
What's in here? Like nuts or something? It's real heavy.
Close.
They're beans.
Coffee beans, that is.
She said, and then after a pause,
I appreciate it, but you could have just given them to the head maid.
Why would I do that? They're for you.
The girls would get suspicious if I suddenly started drinking expensive coffee, so you'd be better off making it a gift to everyone. Last thing I want to deal with is a bunch of spiteful women.
With a disappointed frown, Jacopo said, I'm sorry, I didn't think it through.
Geez, was the sky gonna fall tonight? Jacopo was never this meek. He must have had a pretty damn good day. A little while later, as the rest of the maids had begun dispersing to their chambers, this time the mistress came to visit. She was dressed in her nightwear, her hair down, her makeup removed, and she was just as preternaturally beautiful as ever. The white-haired girl could be dressed in rags and she would still be prettier than most girls. Sorry to bother you so late, she said, fidgeting. There was something I wanted to talk to you about.
What's up? I'm all ears.
The white-haired girl let out a sigh of relief, a smile spreading across her lips. Well,
by the time she finished, Maria was almost on the floor. Holy shit, what are you, 212? She said, completely forgetting her manners.
Evidently, the master and mistress, newlyweds though they were, had yet to bed together. Maria knew that they'd had a lot going on and hadn't managed to consummate the marriage on their wedding day, but still,
there was no excuse for this.
Not to mention, she's the one coming to me for advice. God, he's completely useless.
Maria let out an exaggerated sigh, shaking her head, when she caught sight of the bag of coffee beans, which gave her an idea.
All right, how about this? I'll make you this great cup of coffee, and you take that, and... A smirk spread across Maria's face as she imagined the look on Jacopo's the next morning. Oh, this was going to be good. The storm which would one day befall them was but a speck on the horizon, their hearts still free of darkness.
And that is our final short story. Meaning, we have completely wrapped up House and Fata Morgana. I'm sad. I loved this game. All right. So, next stream. We're going to end here for tonight. Obviously, next stream is Tuesday, 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific. Yes, it's Sunday. No announcements, but as a reminder, if you do have anything that you'd like me to play solo after this, please let me know, because obviously we'll be starting on a new game. I'll take a look at those side games and see if there's anything on console, so that we can play them. And yeah, that's all I got. If you're watching on Twitch, below is the link to our YouTube channel. Please feel free to take a look. And if you've missed any part of this game, they're all up there now. If you are watching on YouTube, feel free to like, subscribe, and all of that. And yeah, be back on Tuesday. Have a good night, everyone.